I have been obsessed with running for the past 13 years. As a sports scientist, I read a heck of a lot. I have read 107 books about running and training, and I wanted to share with you what actually works. In this video, I'm going to break down all the things that I've learned into a simple 5-step framework. These are the 5 steps that we've personally used to help over 10,000 runners here at Coach Parry using our training frameworks. I've also personally used them to improve my own running. And if you follow these 5 steps, they will move the needle for your own running performance. I also want to share with you the one big thing that people just don't understand, which almost every single one of these books touches on. The first of these steps is one of the biggest mistakes that I see most recreational runners make. We know we want to get faster, and so we decide that we're just going to train faster and faster and faster. And we actually don't land up getting that fast after all. So this is called the 80-20 principle of training, and the book is by Matt Fitzgerald. And essentially it goes into saying that 80% of your training needs to be done at an easy sort of pace. So nice and easy, long, slow distance sort of running, and 20% of your training is done at a higher intensity or some interval sort of work. But essentially this principle of training was first written in scientific journals by Dr. Stephen Seiler. And what Stephen Seiler had done is he had studied elite athletes over a long period of time and really looked at their training load distribution. So how much time they spent doing easy training, how much time they spent doing hard training. And what he found out is that essentially most of these elite endurance athletes were doing majority of their training in a very low zone 1 and 2, depending on how you define your zones. And so he essentially came up with this idea of polarized training, right? Or 80-20 as Matt Fitzgerald calls it. And he suggested by doing majority of your training in these easy zones, that is what really makes people great at endurance running. Small amounts in the high intensity, big amounts or big volumes in that easy zone. This, of course, is variable for different ages, different abilities, different genders. And so depending on where you are on that spectrum, you might do slightly more aerobic or easy training and a little bit less of the high intensity work, or you might actually keep it closer to the 80% and the 20%. The next step that really works comes from many of these books, and is implementing a walk-run strategy in your running. Most runners think that walking while running is a weakness. I really want runners to get to the point in their lives where they start seeing walking as their superpower. Essentially, when we utilize walking within our runs, what that does is it allows you to be able to go much further for much longer. And the reasoning is this, is that every time we're running, our muscles are contracting, right? And as you're pushing off, every time your foot pushes off from the ground, your muscles contract concentrically. So what that means is the muscle fibers are pulling together like this. Every time we land on the ground, the muscle fibers are contracting eccentrically, which means they are still contracting, but the muscle fibers are lengthening. And so you can see that that is just not as strong a contraction as the concentric. And there's a lot more damage that happens when we do that. And so when you're running a little bit faster and faster, there are more of those eccentric contractions, and so the muscle fibers tear a little bit more, and as a result you get more sore after your runs. So by implementing walking within your running, you are then reducing that eccentric load, and that allows you to go further for longer, but more importantly as well, is it allows you to be even more ready for your next session, which may be another easy run, but it may be a higher intensity run as well. And so the goal of this walk-run strategy is that we're keeping our easy runs from our 80-20 principle a lot easier, and we're not pushing the line over there, so that it allows us to do our higher intensity runs even faster. Because at the moment what people are doing is they're running too fast in their easy runs and not taking enough walk breaks, and so then when it comes to doing their higher intensity runs, they don't have enough capacity to do that. The goal is to then do those easy runs much easier, including some walking breaks, and that allows you to be this much more ready for your higher intensity runs. If you are running on undulated courses, it also really allows you to smash those hills in amazing ways. So if you take a walk break up those hills, it allows you to keep more capacity for when you can run down the hills. Before I started to believe in a walk-run strategy, I would never walk up hills. My competitive nature would take over and I'd want to just beat everyone up that hill. until I started adding in a walk-run strategy up the hill. So I'd walk up the hill or walk-run up the hill, depending on how long it was. And I'd find that the people that came running past me up the hill, I landed up passing them way later in the race. A big thing about endurance training is that people don't really understand how they get fitter. They think they're getting fitter while they're doing that exercise, while they are running. But in actual fact, your body is actually breaking down while you're doing that. And this is constantly why all these books and all the coaches out there are telling you that recovery is so important. And so this is the next step that I learned while reading all of these books. This is a big thing that we implement here at Coach Parry is recovery. Less is more. If you continue just to train and train and train, you are just going to be digging yourself deeper into a hole and not get better. I know that that is a bit of a backwards concept and it feels like I need to be doing less to get fitter. I know that is backwards, but essentially what we're saying here is that you do have to have some sort of stimulus, some overreaching where you are pushing the body beyond because the body breaks down. And then from there, when you are recovering, the body makes itself a little bit stronger. It goes, oh, I don't actually like feeling like this. Let me make myself a little bit stronger again. And that is how we get fitter. But if you don't implement that recovery part, you are just going to keep digging yourself down and down and down. And the body will never get an opportunity to get all the benefits of the exercise that you're doing. Essentially what I'm saying here, and I read a quote online somewhere and I can't remember from where, but it said, there's no such thing as overtraining, just under recovery. And now, of course, there is such a scientific concept as overtraining. You can find yourself in an overtrained state, but I love the premise of that. It's suggesting that you can train and train and train and you'll never really get better. But if you don't recover enough, so under recovery is really what is going to be affecting your performance. So many books skim over this next one, but in my opinion, it's one of the most important aspects that runners need. Here at Coach Parry, we talk about this a lot, and what I'm referring to is strength training and how important this really is for your running performance and preventing injuries. Where these books do speak about strength training, it's very often elite athletes who are referring back to how important strength training was within their training and how it really helped them to reach the absolute heights that they did. I've noticed in my own training that when I don't do strength work, things just don't feel as together. Body feels a little bit unhinged. There might be a few niggling pains that come up, but when I get back into strength training, I'm like, oh yes, that's what was missing. And so that is why here at Coach Parry, we've built a free strength training plan that you can do in the comfort of your own home. You can just click on the link on screen now to download it. Step number 5 is around nutrition and hydration. This is absolutely pivotal for running and running performance. And what we find is that there is a lot of information on nutrition and hydration. Some of it is reliable and some of it is not. Some of it is based around scientific principles, and some of it is really just bro science, I guess we could call. And so it's very, very key if you are reading these books that you have an idea of how to interpret what they are saying to ensure that they are being scientifically correct and relevant. It may even be the case that you're reading books by the same author that might not be correct on either end of that spectrum. And so you really have to decipher and decide which books are scientifically correct, and so that you're getting the correct information for your running performance with regards to nutrition. And the other thing to consider when you are reading these books on running and nutrition is the difference between nutrition for training and nutrition for racing. Those are two quite different aspects, and so find the authors that are scientifically sound to give you the information that you need. And so step number 6, the one big thing that is consistent in all of these books, and it's the one thing that we also drive home very hard here at CoachParry.com, is consistency. Nothing will work in your running performance if you don't have consistency in your training. You can get the recovery right, the nutrition right, but if you're not consistent over time, building days on days, weeks on weeks, months on months, years on years, you won't see the performances and the performance improvements that you are looking for. Again, when you read books written by elite runners, this is a key concept that is constant in all of their books, is consistency. Is that building those days on days, weeks on weeks is really, really important. That is where they found they got the most of their success, and that would be the same for you. As I mentioned, the ability to do your next session not feeling fatigued is a game changer. This is probably one of the biggest differentiators between the recreational runners and the elite runners. It almost feels like the pro runners were born with the ability to do this. But the truth is, it's a learned skill and anyone can learn it. In this video, we'll share 8 skills that pro runners do that anyone can learn, which will have a massive positive impact on your running.